Hey, everyone. We are live. Thanks so much for joining us today for another Althea community call. I am Deborah Sempier, the CEO and co-founder of Hawk Networks, which is the company that incubated and is supporting behind the Althea blockchain. I'm here representing with my Althea L1 t-shirt, and we'll actually share some different ways that you can get yourself some very cool merch like this, as well as get involved in transforming the infrastructure and utility space like telecom, because of course everyone loves their ISP and broadband provider. So we can tell you how to sort of take back your sovereignty and resiliency and be part of the movement that we're building later as we get into the discussion. And I'm here joined with Malek from Citadel.one. If you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what y'all do at Citadel.one, we can get into the discussion.
Yeah, GM. Hey everyone, I'm Malek. I'm a Citadel.one contributor. My main focus is governance and research initiatives to the chains we support. For those who are unfamiliar with Citadel.one, we provide infrastructure and validating services for 50 plus chains on mainnet and 50 more on testnet. This includes the Cosmos Hub, Sui, DYDX, Osmosis, and recently Althea. Excited to be here to talk about things Althea, and I also do not like my ISP provider, so looking forward to learn more about what you guys are building.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think like Althea, we got our start back in 2017. I was really, revolutionaries and thinking about how blockchain can create cooperative efforts, which is really what a, proof of stake ecosystem is. Behind the scenes, it's not a corporation with a centralized database. It's really a collective of these operators, like what y'all do at Citadel.one. I think we've lost a bit of that, especially in terms of governance too, along the way, in all of the, hype and mayhem of tokens going up and down. But really, there's what's so exciting about and different about blockchains is the agency and governance of the operational set, right? The people that actually run the chain and make the decisions and do the things is really in this vast kind of multi-stakeholder global environment, which really creates a much more resilient environment than, just kind of the traditional corporations. But yeah, I'm just curious about Citadel's journey too. Maybe you can kind of, you're in governance and research, just talk a little bit about, how y'all got started and, kind of your journey through the ecosystem. You validating on Cosmos Hub. Obviously, things have changed over time, and yeah, curious your thoughts on
that. Yes, so I'm not a founding member of Citadel.one, so perhaps the initial part. I can't comment much on that, but we've been in the Cosmos ecosystem mainly focused for the last 7 years. And that is our main focus. And yeah, like I said, I think there is like the whole idea of like the blockchain layer of things. It allows for room to customize and like make things that weren't possible before. Like, for example, I was watching one of the podcasts you guys did earlier, and the whole like ISP things. For example, there's a tower near you, and like technically you can connect, but like the layer that allows you to communicate directly with that thing, like either you have it or you don't, and the coordination enabled by the tech built on blockchain can unlock that. So yeah, I think that's exciting, and I'm glad there's more and more focus on DePIN as a category. So yeah, excited to be part of the validator set of Althea to help enable that to more and more users.
Yeah, and I can kind of tease that out a little bit, right? In terms of like, if we think about the infrastructure that's part of like telecom or utility networks, really, are very similar. We use telecom because that's our, kind of our main focus. But yeah, to your point, this infrastructure could provide access to many different users, but it's gated behind the way. And it's interesting because oftentimes we think, well, people don't have access, or my internet access is bad because there's a lack of infrastructure. And that's actually really not the real case. It's really how the financial model of capturing the revenue happens, right? So if I'm an ISP right now, I have to lock you into my kind of gated, I have to capture the customer of the user on kind of a monthly basis and sort of silo you in order to capture your revenue and capture that value back. And, that's not good for users, of course, because then you're only set to a certain set of infrastructure. You have no, choice or agency around how your data is moving through the internet. But it's also not good for operators either, right? Recently, there was an article called Bankruptcy G, right? As like coming after 5G is Bankruptcy G, because so many operators had highly leveraged, positions, and just were not able to kind of keep up with that, because there's a lot of adjustable market that just sort of sits there because you have to build a whole nother set of infrastructure on top of your competitors' infrastructure in order to access the customer because of the way that money is captured. And that's really the exciting thing. This is what the big aha back in like 2017, 2018 for us was like, well, hey, you really don't need to keep building infrastructure. You can utilize infrastructure from many different stakeholders who then can participate in this open economy. It would work better for operators. It works better for users. Everyone's aligned on the best route gets paid. And the other kind of cool thing there is that the operators on the blockchain side, there is real revenue, not just sort of like, let's speculate on a token and hope that token number going up is going to continue to sustain the chain. Althea is these microtransactions that have a fee, and that fee gets remitted to the token stakers and the validators in that USDC or DAI or USDS on the chain, right? The stable coins moving around, and that sustains operators like Citadel.one and other validators that are providing that core infrastructure for those transactions to be made. So it creates this really sustainable, aligned, and resilient utilities environment, and it's purpose built for that. The caveat I would say is that this sort of real restructuring of an economic environment doesn't happen overnight. So for those community members that have been with us for the long haul for year over year, I mean, you probably have seen all of this great infrastructure, the traction, the PMF really grow, but it's not it's creating a legacy of a new economy rather than so like we were certainly not a meme coin, and appreciate the many and very loyal community members that have, stayed with us on the journey. And Citadel.one, you all have been through also building the decentralized bridge, and we're part of the Gravity story as well too. So, appreciate that commitment. And now part of Althea's story as well as a validator on that side as well.
Yeah, I really like the idea of like the revenue structure like that Althea followed up, because usually everything is tied to the main token, and that sometimes there's an upside to it, but also most times it's the opposite. And since you're like enabling real use cases in real life, the revenue is tied to however the customer pays, and I think that is like we need a lot more of that. And yeah, I do like that. And I do have a question. So basically with Althea, based on what I understood, it is you can basically turn your Wi-Fi or like add to an ISP and like basically sell excess bandwidth to other people, or borrow from other people and pay as you go. Is that how it works, or did I get it right?
Structurally, you certainly could plug, the Althea infrastructure in and create a sort of mini ISP with your home backhaul. Although what we found back in, kind of along the journey there is that it really doesn't really meet the demand. And so, what's evolved is actually a lot of agency towards smaller to mid-sized operators, who then create their own, wholesale businesses basically around, providing that infrastructure. And um, so Althea, think of Althea more as the payment or the billing layer. Sometimes we say like Stripe for machines, right? It creates this management and billing layer that enables kind of new ways of structuring things. And then the participants, maybe you have a antenna on your roof, or your business that has a tower. Those that revenue is programmatically to you as well. So there's kind of different stakeholders, but we do, the most successful deployments really have a network operator. That's someone who's like answering the phone, going out and installing the equipment. And, we think that's a key kind of component as that community business. Or what we're also seeing is enterprises really entering into the operation game as well, or into the infrastructure game. So, we talked to an auto OEM a while ago, and this was very common, right? They may be paying, quite high costs, even billions of dollars over the course of 10 years in public, right? Connectivity costs. You're paying your ISP for all that telemetry, the over-the-air updates. All of that can be quite expensive. But if you're able to build infrastructure to offset that cost, that cost is directly savings. So what we're seeing is, you might have things like a McMobile or McDonald's Mobile. You might have enterprises that also are participating with their real estate, with the hardware in this kind of economy. So at the core of what you're saying, it's correct. Like anyone can actually kind of plug in this infrastructure. You could run, actually what's really cool is we made even a 4G, 5G core that you can run on your home router. So it's a Linksys, you could take your Linksys router you buy from Best Buy or Amazon, install the Althea firmware on it, and actually have a little 5G, home instance. And we're working on some kits and stuff like that make that easy to play around with. However, when it comes to like commercial instances where people are expecting a level of service,
you
need a network operator to support that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does make sense to meet the demand of users, especially today, like bandwidth-wise. You do have to rely on like at least semi-professional providers instead of like, because peer-to-peer is great, but it doesn't scale as much.
Yeah, and that's what so there was kind of a couple of examples back in 2018, us and kind of Helium are getting started on these more, early ideas of decentralized internet. But I remember sort of driving through my town I live in, where we had deployed this, and kind of people had put up their own equipment. I saw the cables hanging off, and like no drip loops, and I was like, oh, this is probably not going to, like, you need someone to curate, have the insurance, be professional about it, and create that environment that could actually scale a real utility. That's really where this idea of supporting network operation came in. And so we have like a time-based payment that pays for service-related things as part of the flexibility of payment stack. And that really transformed how Althea grew in that way. And then and so I think that was kind of a big piece of that along the way that we discovered. And I think probably some of the reason why Helium's like LoRaWAN struggled as well too. If we think about that, it was very much underutilized, and because it wasn't necessarily curated or the service wasn't provided. And of course also like LoRa isn't, well, or on the cellular side as well too, when they tried to roll out 5G, there was some other problems there too. But I think there's you have to be a professional entity to provide the services.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Maybe like for use cases like, I don't know, perhaps VPN or like a quick access for like to check out a quick thing. It does make sense, that the peer-to-peer thing, but as soon as you need a regular steady supply of like you can't scale as fast, and therefore it does make sense to do providers instead. Plus, they already have everything built out, so it's the way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think and I think there's an interesting other sort of flex that's happening right now, which is really exciting. Is that and I think we'll there's some exciting things coming out for Althea on the cellular and mobile side. But together with many other operators, the core is now a 5G, 4G networks is now more accessible, it's more affordable. I mean, it used to be 10 years ago, if you wanted to run a 4G network, you were paying $250,000 or something just to set up the logic part of the network, the cellular core, or more, right? And then so those costs have come way down. Hardware costs have come way down. Now O-RAN is here, which is like a modular radio design for 5G, where you have a separate core and logic, and the radios are just transmitting. So it allows you to kind of do these Legos of infrastructure. And now we also have roaming sims that easily roam between private networks and public networks. So this idea of who is a carrier, what infrastructure can participate, then we start to get to that vision that we talked about in the beginning, where anyone can provide infrastructure. Yes, it might be coordinated by a different types of operators, but you can see where a business like a Starbucks Mobile could evolve, and these local operators, your municipality, your community network can all be part of this open kind of infrastructure in a Lego-like way. So it's pretty exciting. Like I said, this disruptions don't happen overnight, but I can see that vision start to stack on each other. And now we also have the blockchain to scale. I mean, Althea's been on Gnosis chain for a very long time, working to get over to a sovereign ecosystem where that scaling could happen, to your point, right? I think we can chat a little bit about that, too. You're on the governance side too. I'm curious your thoughts on interacting with governance. Althea very much is community driven and community led. Right now actually we're looking for community feedback and stakeholder feedback on the initial IFI DEX, which for folks that might be listening in, that's infrastructure finance or IFI. And there's a purpose-built DEX on the Althea.one, available at test.althea.link. Check it out, participate. If you'd like to, still join us, you can jump into the Discord. We'd love to, get you all some testnet tokens, and you can, kind of kick the tires on a bit. But it's pretty exciting what's coming on that side of things too. I don't know if you've had a chance to check it out.
I did, yeah. I did check out the DEX real quick. I do like the especially the bridging experience. I'm guessing like you can just hop in from like Ethereum real quick, or like the Cosmos ecosystem. But I'm curious, what would be the main assets like focus, like tradable there? Like what would be your focus in terms of like assets that are going to be traded there?
I think that's a really great question, because it gets to kind of like, what are we doing here with the DEX?
Yeah.
Also, I would invite, like I said, right now there's a forum post on there. If there is, community feedback that's, really going to dictate what's on the DEX. It's also permissionless to add pools, so anyone can come along, add a pool to the, to be utilized. And by anyone, we also mean any programmatic machine, because really, when we think about this vision of open architecture and the infrastructure, it's payments between machine to machine. So operators can set up fleets of vending machines or utility, like say solar panels, and maybe there's a reward or a solar panel token that needs to get traded with USDS or USDC, a stable token, or even Althea token. That could all happen programmatically. So the vision of Althea DEX or IFI DEX is not necessarily that humans will be swapping. Of course, they will, as needed, to move in and out of things as they need to. But this really empowers the emerging economy of machine infrastructure, as the machines remit these microtransactions, to also be able to swap. if I can, for 5 minutes, let me kind of walk you through an example of how this might work, especially with our liquid infrastructure, which is the tokenized telecom assets themselves. So one way that's really exciting, we're thinking about utilizing this is for like data centers, right? So if you've got a data center, you have a lot of things happening under the roof of that, right? You have compute, you have storage, you have VPN, you have ISP infrastructure, all these different infrastructure, right? And then so they're disparate different revenue streams. And some of those are going to be in just, dollar-based revenue, or maybe USDC or USDT. But some of those also might have a speculative token along with it. You might see a compute token or a storage token. And then those can swap easily to USDT or USDC, or even go from USDT to USDC, depending on where you're at in the world, programmatically, and then back out to fiat at regular intervals, all programmatic behind the back end. So you could say, okay, I'm an investor, I want to invest in this amount of compute in a data center. I put in X amount of capital, utilizing maybe the liquid.althea.net site. It all under the back end earns this revenue, and all of this sort of basket of tokens and assets swaps to USDC, swaps back out to centralized exchange, and then pays me back into my whatever fiat I want in order. And that can all happen under the hood. So that's what's so exciting about the iFi DEX. It really completes that sovereign ecosystem and that basically new economy for machines.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you'd say it's more for machines than, well, humans, the DEX.
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly humans will be able to utilize it for, and right now that's, right now there still isn't, it's not like AI is here and machine economy is here. It's close. And we're, but it's like early internet. There's still a lot of friction. These things are not as programmatic as we, I don't know if you heard the news. There was that Microsoft invested company that had overinflated their AI, and it was actually just developers, humans in the back end doing the work.
Yeah, you hear a lot of stories like that recently. I think there's this delivery bot at a university, and like turns out it was operated by people, I don't know, for like $2 an hour. And I don't know, I guess it's fake it until you make it kind of thing. But we're definitely not there yet.
Yeah, I think exactly. There's a lot of those examples around that. So while the iFi DEX is created for the emerging machine economy, and we do see that evolving, certainly where we're at right now is a little bit more manual, is more human. And what we really want to enable at the moment is for people to, take what they're earning from liquid infrastructure, which is a USDC or a stable coin, swap that for other tokens, and then move that in and out of the DeFi ecosystem as they need.
Yeah.
Right. So that's really what that is enabling today, and then empowering the, machine economy of the future.
That makes sense. I think you definitely require like a canonical native DEX for even like from like USDT to USDC, like you said, because of like a lot of regulatory uncertainty around specific digital dollars, even for like stable pools that are like native to the coordination layer between providers and customers. That is a necessity, I would say. So I'm glad you guys are already delivered on that. And yeah,
that's a good point. I mean, I think a lot of the focus too was on, I mean, certainly you could rely on only centralized exchanges for swapping and changing out, but there's a lot, you really lose a lot in sovereignty, in not having a native on-chain, DEX. And that was really a lot of the big impetus for it as well too. Really everything that you need is there on the Althea L1. It's a complete ecosystem, and it doesn't rely on, those other instances working. What it was a journey though. So the iFi DEX is a fork of Ambient, and it needed a lot of work in order to, it's always kind of surprising to me where you have like DeFi or primitives in the blockchain ecosystem that you sort of think are a bit more polished than they actually are.
Yeah. I would say even in addition to sovereignty, like the UX, the the experience for like anyone is not going to be the same if you're going to have to bridge out, swap, do whatever, and like come back in. So there's definitely that angle, which is, I'd say, even more important than sovereignty, at least from the user's perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, I've long been sort of the person that's like privacy and sovereignty and all these things are a premium and willing to pay a premium price for it. But that it really isn't the vast majority of people, right? Most people need that, things to work well and aren't willing to kind of pay that friction or price for sovereignty or
Yeah.
that's just the reality of it. But we hope that along the way that those principles also are a value add. I think we want to start with good UX, enable those Legos, and enable things to work right. And like as I said, right now that's exactly why we're spending a bunch of time on the test net, and why we do very much appreciate. We've got several hundred folks that are participating in the iFiDex test net. That really does help, right? That's going to help our overall success, is really, assessing out all those little different corners and, ways of using it, so that when we do launch here, in the next few weeks or whatever, that it's going to be really polished. But
yeah,
excited to be launching and getting to that point of like finishing things.
Okay, so when minute? If, I'm sure a lot of people listening will want to know.
Exactly. What it's like, to my point, it's been a journey, and we definitely appreciate everyone's patience along the way as we've been putting one foot in front of the other. I think I've said this in other talks as well, as it's really one step at a time, building these blocks. And of course we've wanted to and to have things be ready before now, but I would say what's exciting is liquid infrastructure is ready. We're going to put a meaningful amount of liquid infrastructure on chain once it sort of unlocks. So we'll have the iFiDex, liquid infrastructure and revenue and volume will start to come on chain. And then we're working on some other funnels of capital as well too, to support more liquid infrastructure and really kind of kicking off that sustainability flywheel there on the chain. So the timing feels right. The pieces are all together, and it feels like it's all coming together. So we have a guest, who has shared with us hello from Crypto Lad, and he also says, "How do you like the Cosmos ecosystem?" So Malek, what do you think? How do you like the Cosmos ecosystem?
Okay, it's a tough question and a good one. I think I love the Cosmos ecosystem because, well, despite it's a lot of negativities, at least from the outside, but when you look at it, there's most innovations, I'd say, at least on many fronts, happen in the Cosmos. I mean, take for 1 second liquid staking.
Mm-hmm.
It was pioneered in the Cosmos ecosystem, but picked up somewhere else. Shared security, aka restaking, also in the Cosmos ecosystem. So like you got a really exciting tech that allows you to experiment and do things, customize, that weren't possible in other ecosystems. And yeah, so it's a great ecosystem to be in, to be working at, researching and learning in.
I think that's a great question. I mean, for my part too, I would say that you said customizable, right? I mean, really was that centralized app chain or sovereignty thesis, right? That certainly not everything needs to be so customizable. Maybe if you just simply have an application, you can be where you need to be. But we, as we've done the time being an application on the Gnosis chain, being the top application kind of year over there, and that lack of customizability, the fact that we were just one in a general purpose chain, doesn't work for utilities and infrastructure. So I think that customizability, that sovereignty that's available on the actual foundational layer is important to many different use cases. Certainly we see some of the other, like the story, for example, is one that's using the Cosmos ecosystem with the EVM. I think that was a really big unlock to also another another innovation in the Cosmos ecosystem was the EVM layer to the Cosmos SDK, which created that standardization across many chains.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, and I'm also a bit, but maybe a hot take, is I actually think the governance of the operational set is still there in Cosmos where many other chains, because of the difficulty of operating validators or proof of stake, has lost a lot of that, or it's become extremely centralized. There still is a wide diversity of Cosmos validators out there that then do participate in governance of how these chains operate.
Yeah, I think they're like more and more overlapping, maybe because it's not easy to operate on multiple chains and like do it consistently because, and as I'm sure you know, app chains specifically, like they take a while to find PMF and sustainability, and yeah, that kind of like raises the participation barrier a bit, but it's good to see a lot of operators like still being around from like the very early days and like still validating. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's actually a good point as well too, because I think maybe a lot of the negativity was sort of the unsustainable ecosystems around the high inflation chains, right? That created, if there wasn't something that sort of came along to like intersect and create sustainability, which in many cases there just wasn't. I think we'd even, our support of the gravity ecosystem suffered from a lot of those same mechanics. It was painful, right? And oftentimes you didn't have an ROI for running infrastructure.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a reset happening. It does feel like, if we can, thinking about RWA, bringing in those EVM chains, like for Althea, of course, we have PMF, we have the killer app.
Yeah.
Now it's just transferring that over. And, like I said, like you see, so like Story, maybe Barachain is arguably maybe there, depending on your take on that. But there are, like a new set of kind of chains kind of coming in and playing around with the economics a bit more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of projects and a lot of builders are learning from the unsustainability of high inflationary emissions, at least in the beginning. And a lot of protocols are trying to address that in many ways. I think osmosis is like, taking also via governance, enabled by governance, reallocating, redirecting incentives, seeking other forms of revenue to eliminate inflation kind of thing. Also, I think the Neutron guys, after they left the hub, they were like, okay, we're just going to allocate a fixed amount to our like operational set and, see how things work out. But like many projects are like shifting away from the emissions thing because I think it only makes sense only for Bitcoin at this point because it's too big to fail. But yeah, anyone else is hard to maintain.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Bitcoin's an interesting one too, because I mean, I remember back in the day sort of mining it and being part of that, like in a milk crate. And I think that I miss some of that though too, like the home validation, the home participation, and where more people could be involved in it. And I think a lot of times that's the appeal of TPIN, right? It's like, how can I be part of this revolution? And maybe even Althea, as you said, we said earlier, it's Althea's in many ways a B2B protocol, right? It's a payment layer for ISPs, utilities, and things like that to use. And although that's smaller than medium-sized operators, it still is a bit of a B2B play. So I think there still is that kind of missing, like, how do we, how do people get involved in where they might believe in something in the mission and, in a ways that's a little less friction than, I mean, Citadel.one runs a full professional, it's a business, So that's one of the things that we hope to work on, is one, either being involved on the validator or running a light client, for example, in the home routers themselves. And actually, many of the Gravity and Althea validators are smaller operators, and trying to include them in the set and participation is a big part of what we're hoping to do over the years. And that's where we're definitely appreciative of the folks that are coming on and being involved. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I agree, and also I think it makes sense since Althea uses gravity for bridging. Might as well be the same set. Is a lot easier to coordinate in case of anything happening. I would say to having a majority overlapping could be beneficial for the network.
Speaking there's an interesting, if you haven't seen it yet, in the Gravity forum, there's an interesting idea kind of forming that I'm really excited about. But essentially, the concept goes that there's this large community pool on Gravity, right? Just it's like, I think almost over a third, maybe even a percent of the tokens are this community pool. But you have some problems with really centralized validators out there. So what if the community actually utilized those tokens through governance and said, actually, these are going to be allocated via governance votes and staked across the validator set? Or you could even, the community could even do DeFi with them, right? And say, these tokens are going to go into this pool or whatever else. But essentially, then those mechanisms can happen through governance votes. And so I'm really excited about sort of the community having that level of like dexterity of governance over their community pool. Whereas before it was just sort of like, okay, we're going to have to move it over here and then do this. And it's super manual. And look, in one governance vote, we say, okay, grab the community pool tokens and validate them, and stake them across all of this. Then what also happens is, as those fees come in, Gravity is also a fee-based, revenue-based fee. So those USDC or maybe those Althea tokens or whatever sort of moving around there, that can go back to the community pool because they have them staked on all these validators. They have them put it to work. So it's a really, I'm really excited about it because it just, like I said, it gives the community back kind of the reins on that, and creates a sustainable, kind of treasury there.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an exciting experiment that I also think, who was it? I think DYDX experimented a bit with that, but since they did it via like an LSD provider, I think Stride at the time, but basically there were a lot of tokens in the community pool, and since DYDX like distributes revenue in USDC, they were like, okay, I might as well increase the economic security of the chain by like doing some community staking. And they would, like, for example, if I remember correctly, they were buying back DYDX from the market with the staking yield that the community pool received. So yeah, there's a lot of like exciting things you could do, and it's only enabled by governance because anyone could be like, hey, how about we do this? And if that makes sense for everybody else, you could just push that idea and see if it works or not. And that's you don't see that everywhere. It's
yeah, but that's the idea, and that of having agency in these systems, right? And I think that's one of the main benefits of having blockchain. Otherwise, just have a corporation, right? Why recreate financial systems? Yeah, curious. How did the DYDX stuff work out? Did it just sort of fizzle?
Well, I think now they opted out of that, and like they basically got an entity, a sub DAO elected by DYDX community to kind of run that. I think it's a treasury DAO. So now they're not using an LSD provider anymore. I think they found it to be a successful experience, and now they don't want to pay the commission fee anymore. Or
I see. Yeah. Well, hey, if you're listening to this call, even now, live or afterwards, and you have thoughts about these sorts of things, please join the Gravity Discord in the community. Chat with us about that or Althea. And like these conversations and dialogue and discussion are formative to how the roadmap of these chains. So we would love to, please don't feel shy and come. We'd love to hear from you. Or participate in the IFI docs, kick the tires, let us know what pools you want. If you're excited about a particular stable coin, or to your point, maybe Bitcoin is a good BTC or Coinbase BTC on the Althea IFI docs. Just love to hear thoughts on that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, you all are validating on Althea. Staking is live on the chain due to a governance vote sort of earlier this year. So if folks are looking to find you or utilize the tools that Citadel.one has, what's a good way for them to learn a little bit more about what y'all do and do that?
I would say if you want to stay up to date with everything Citadel.one, the best place would be to follow us on Twitter at Citadel.DAO. We basically publish all of our updates there. You can also check out our very user-friendly wallet on app.citadel.one to manage staking on your favorite Cosmos chains. And or reach out to me personally if you have any inquiries, questions, whatever, at Earl Montagu on Twitter or on Telegram. And
So we also last week there's a community call on our YouTube, and if you all are also joining us, appreciate that like and subscribe. But we did a call with the Cosmos Stations team, who run a great explorer called MintScan, and so in the MintScan Explorer you can see Citadel.one and all of the validator stats. So if you're trying to figure out where it makes sense to stake, or if you want to participate, you can. That's a great deep dive, a good overview. They've got a lot of, data available there. And we kind of go through that deep dive last week on all the different things you can see, and some insights on the validator set too. So definitely check out that video as well. And then, we have some, as we've sort of discussed along the way, there's really exciting summer coming up, obviously unlock of the chain and moving things around. The Althea cellular and mobile, all those pieces are kind of coming together. So you'll see some work on that. So just lots of really exciting things. Definitely would love for y'all to join the community and in Discord and Twitter and stay on top of all the exciting developments on the Althea side too. And I think with that, I will probably get to wrap things up for this community call. Check out the Citadel.one team, and we will see you all next week for another exciting talk. Next week's actually a big week, so definitely.
Definitely be here.
Yeah, well, Citadel.one is amazing. So this is definitely starting the month off right. But we also have a pretty big week next week too. So and week after as well. So definitely stay in touch. It's going to be exciting. And thanks everybody for joining this community call.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks Deborah for having me. It's been a real pleasure, and looking forward to working with the Althea team and to future updates from the Althea network.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.